Thanks for those tips. Now, of course, it was a bit of a stoush in Melbourne last week between Eddie Maguire and Caroline Wilson. Let's take a step back at the clip, and then we'll have some comments on that.
On this one, I do think he probably crossed the line, and I didn't like the language, and I think it's such a pity that they needed to default to that sort of really vicious language.
In fact, I reckon we should start the campaign for a one-person slide next year. Caroline Wilson, and I'll put in 10 grand straight away, make it 20, and if she stays under, 50. That was clearly banter, but on White Ribbon Weekend, we have to be ever vigilant in stamping out anything that could be misconstrued one iota as supporting the abhorrent act of domestic violence. It was all done in a spirit of the fun of the day and who would be next going down the slides.
I don't accept that it was playful banter, I've got to say. My understanding was that Eddie was pretty adamant that he wasn't going to apologise, and that if he was forced to apologise, he would resign. I don't think he was... I'm not sure. Look, I'm not privy to those conversations. It's like casual racism. Casual violent language might be meant as a joke, but I wonder how many times we have to draw this line in the sand between this sort of language and what is a joke and what is obviously completely unacceptable.
Yes, probably what is acceptable. I thought we'd try and get some female perspective on this. So let's bring in a couple of the greats, a couple of Hall of Famers. Now, between them, both Captain Australia, both played for Australia, both in the South Australian Hall of Fame, both unbelievably successful sporting women.
Yes.
And to try and introduce them would take the whole segment.
It would.
So sitting at the table right now, Poppy, there's 9 Hall of Famers.
Between the four of us.
Between the four of us. And you have none, but we appreciate you being here. Jenny Williams and Michelle Dekker join us. Thanks for coming in, ladies. Let's start with you, Jen. Drawing the line. Are we starting to get to the stage now where we can't have humour anymore? Where is the line?
The line's who's around. So I probably figure you guys can say anything you like to me while I'm here, because I'll defend myself. I'll be able to be part of that fun, and there's no doubt we have it. I probably think the problem was with that, it was she wasn't there. And if you can't say anything, we can go, in my life, I've never experienced domestic violence. I've never experienced anything that's like that. And I grew up with a dad and 3 brothers, but they're all pretty supportive. I looked in the paper the other day and 25% of the call-outs in Elizabeth are for domestic violence. So at some point we have to go, it is a problem. She perceived it because Carolyn wasn't there as a problem. So that's what any form of discrimination is if you actually perceive it that way. But probably I'll go to one thing. It's no use us being outraged unless we actually do something about it. And that's where so much of this happens, and everyone jumps on the bandwagons and we all get outraged, but nothing actually changes in how things actually happen in society, and that's where we've got to make the leap. We've got to actually do better by our daughters and our wives and our sisters and our girlfriends.
All right, so Michelle, it's come out now, it's raised its head, it's got a lot of controversy around it. Do you think it was a fireball? Or, I mean, on the back of what Jenny said, we accept that.
Yeah.
But is it going too far? I mean, it's made a point, nothing seems to have happened since that time, but should it have gained the momentum it did?
It was always going to take momentum, and it was always going to gain momentum, because we are at a time of change. We're at a time of change for women. There's a lot out there of trying to educate society on how to treat women better, and home violence and violence in general. So it was just an opportunity, I think, to flare its ugly head. Did it go too far? Yeah, it probably did, because like we said, it was set in a bit of banter and a bit of fun, but it was an opportunity there to really nail home what education needs to happen out there, to be able to at least educate society on how do we speak, how do we actually educate the young people of today, not so much the older generation that does take it as a bit of banter and lets water run off your back. I don't think that, like Jenny said, that actually exists in the younger generation. And some of the TV commercials that we're showing now is educating our kids on how we treat women better. And I think it was just a catalyst.
I think my opinion's evolved too, and I think both the ladies here have encapsulated it perfectly. And it's almost like when beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I think some comments are made where Michelle might take offence to it, Jenny might not. So it's all about, as Jenny pointed out quite correctly, it's all about how the recipient of that message feels rather than the intention of that message. And there was a perfect example in that. Tony Shaw in the same studio made basically the same comment, but she was comfortable in his presence to take it on board as fun and was offended by Eddie's comments. The fact of the matter is, I think Caroline Wilson as a personality is also a polarising personality, and that adds to it where we feel as though, well, how come you can have a polarising opinion on someone and try to defend it, but someone says something in joke and you're offended by it? I think they're two different scenarios now in reflection, looking through it.
It's pretty easy just to say one thing. If someone's offended, just say sorry.
Sorry.
And that's one of the biggest things.
At the point.
Say sorry and actually maybe even do something about it, because if they were both great causes, both white ribbon and the motor neurone disease are both really important things.
Yes.
But my point is, at some point, sorry. Now, what are we actually doing, and how are we showing that women are inclusive? And I'll be a little bit critical of maybe some stations that have no women. You've got us on today. We'll have an opinion. Yeah. Hopefully we'll have a joke, and you guys know we can actually laugh about lots of things.
You're funnier than us.
I want to say I'm sorry now for anything I say through this segment. So if I even say anything, I'm sorry before I say it.
Well, the thing is, Phil, between you and I, we could have the best stupid banter and say anything, and we would know it was a joke. Because you know what? You treat me with respect when we're having coffee. We get on well, we'll chat about issues properly. Now, as soon as you've got that, and this is the same thing I try and teach kids, if we don't have fun, we don't have a joke, there's a problem. And as a woman, I know you treat me equally when we actually do have the banter together, when we have fun together, and when you really show me respect by putting me on a show. Guess what? That actually shows you've got actions and you're doing something. Everyone else, even if you say sorry, but if you don't actually have women on your show very often, you're probably not doing a lot.
I think also it's about the relationships. I think that's a big one for me, is that if you have a relationship with someone that's built on integrity and build on a bit of fun and banter, but ultimately it's about the values, and you've established that over a period of time, anything can be said. And I think that's the respect that carries here. However, if it's a toxic environment and you have had a toxic history with someone, whether it's in media or whatever, of course it's not going to come off as lightly. So we've got to be really careful about that, is where do we say it and when do we recognise, well, my relationship with that person isn't at that point where I can say what I said. So if I have that banter, I've got to be able to say, look, that was a joke, probably let a little bit too much go.
During the course of the break, you had to throw to the tips and clips. We all had a joke about, geez, you better get that right. Now, if all of a sudden Michelle said, well,
hang on, I don't want you.
Yeah. So, I would have had to say, geez, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend straight away, because I wouldn't have. I would have just had a playful banter with, and I think you're right. It's all about the company you keep and the respect you have, and understanding the person a little bit as well.
Yeah. And can I also say, I think football is a really important vehicle for equality, because I got flown up to the APY lands up there because the domestic violence was huge, and I got to speak at the football meeting, and it was absolutely magnificent to be able to talk about how maybe sport can be a vehicle of really good things happening in the community by us actually addressing it. And so, I never want to take fun out of my life. I never wanted to stop having blokes who I can have jokes with. But as I was saying right from the start, it's about respect. And maybe also, if people don't genuinely like each other, and I think that happens a little bit in football or in sport, where maybe journalists and with each other, or even with players or coaches, there's not a genuine respect because there's not a like there. And sometimes it's actually personal as much as it is gender-based.
I would have liked to have seen Carolyn, all that being said, I thought it was an opportunity, and maybe in reflection Carolyn might think the same, I don't know, but for Carolyn Wilson to say, hey, listen, it's a joke, it was meant as a joke, apology accepted. The fact is, I don't want the focus to shift away from White Ribbon Day for these great causes. This is what we should be focused on. I don't want to spend 2 weeks discussing something between me and Eddie and myself, where really the focus should be on this. And that's where I think all of us, the degree of offence taken sort of didn't seem to match up in general public. I didn't think.
You know what I'd like to see now, though? I think you ladies touched on it really well. As long as something positive comes out of it, I would like to see next year that there's a double slide with Eddie and Caroline together, with their each on each other's head as they go down the slide together, and $100,000 goes to Mate, and you're on
And I think
something
too,
like
I
that.
think the media took a little bit of license.
A bit of
too.
fun. I want to see some fun.
But so all of a sudden, every word was she was threatened to be drowned. Now I didn't hear too much of the drowning bit in the dialogue. I think the media need to take responsibility as well. It's all very well for personalities to to have some friction between them, but the media need to be more responsible. Now, if I say, Smythe, I'm going to hold you under the water, it doesn't mean I'm want to drown you. I don't think there's ever any of that thought.
Yeah.
So I thought that
No,
it just
you
went a
need
bit
to
too far.
apologise for that. Can you say that again?
Yeah.
But be very careful because, again, what happens is, if we live in privileged positions, and I live in a position where probably the only discrimination I have is in the area of football, where if you're trying to do things or be involved, often as a female, oh, you're old, you mightn't be able to talk to young blokes, please. It's all personality based. And when we talk about language, none of us would actually understand that maybe you could influence someone to do something.
Yeah, fair enough.
And we've lived long lives, but you guys are quite influential in how you speak about things, and so even in jest sometimes what you guys actually mean in jest is not taken that way by some other. And if there was one person in the whole world that maybe did something bad because of that, if it was me saying it, I'd come out and say, look, I am really sorry, because maybe I never even thought about that. And if it is possible, maybe we need to actually go, okay, let's get over this, let's do something positive. Fun, agree, do some money raising with all of this, but also let's look at how we can do something genuinely to stop violence happening. And I know a lot of blokes go, it's not fair because there's violence against men, and I agree with that too, because we talk about the one punch
in comparison,
thing.
it's minor.
And also it's often perpetuated against each other. However, let's actually go back to women are often in a less powerful position, and it behoves those people in a more powerful position to be more responsible and go, yeah, let's do this, and say sorry, move on, but do something about it.
And I think that going back to that actual clip when we had a look at it, there was a point there where something could have been said by Eddie to say, look, of course that was in gist. Because I think at that point he did step over the mark and take it a little bit too far. Even though it was banter and humour, the responsibility comes from all of us when we stand in front of the media, when people look up to us as role models, to at least show integrity and respect.
We need to get to a break, but I think we're going to have to go like we did with KG here, Poppy. We're going to have the part two, because I want to get to these two women about the line in the sand as far as the media goes. You'll have to watch again next week. Stay with us, still more to come.